As we're sort of coming to the end of our conversation, but you must be aware of the fact that your industry's got this image of flying oligarchs and superannuated football players and even wags, wives and girlfriends, all over the world. And I just wonder what you think of this image. I mean, does it reflect the reality in any way? And whether it's something which you try to combat by bringing a certain, I was going to use the word sobriety, but after you've been telling us about this vodka story, to try and balance the reality of a very serious business with this rather high-flown jet-set image which people have of you. What do you think of that one?
I think we've been the victim of this sort of press assault for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And frankly, there's probably no way to combat it. And one of the key reasons is that it's quite a boring industry, like most are when you really dive into
Doesn't
it.
sound boring.
And well, I mean, there are elements that are interesting, certainly,
Right.
But it's almost impossible for us to communicate the reality, frankly, because it doesn't make good newsprint.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it's much easier to go after inflammatory stories that don't represent our industry at all, and we can't stop that. It'll keep going.
The most important thing to say is that primarily this business is about having effective business tools for leaders.
Exactly.
Effective business tools.
Yeah. I mean, this industry grew up in the States.
Yeah.
It still represents over 65% of the market in the States. Yeah. And this type of equipment allows a CEO or a senior management team to visit 5 or 6 remote locations within the continental US in a day.
Okay, so it really is.
So they can visit 5 or 6 plants. They can go and see 5 or 6 sources of money if they're doing a roadshow, and this is how these things are used. Right? You try to do that on a scheduled airline, you'll be doing it. It take you a week.
So it's the convenience factor related to the cost.
Well, and I think that the image is that people have business jets just because they want to do whatever they want, and certainly there probably is a very small proportion of the industry that represents. However, if you look at the bulk of the industry, it's hard-nosed business people. Whether it's a high net worth individual, he didn't get there by ignoring cost issues. If it's a company, certainly they're going to be accountable to their shareholders. They make use of an asset because it makes sense for the business.
That's something which actually maybe we haven't gone into or hasn't come through very much in the conversation, that essentially you're not just carrying single people around, but you're carrying management teams of people. Yeah?
Oh yeah, and the discretion of flying on a private jet means that meetings happen on airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, if you speak to most investment bankers, they are banned from working in the business class of a scheduled airline in case one of the competitors is sitting behind them.
Sure.
Okay. On a business jet, you can actually hold a 6-person board meeting quite conveniently, and you have discretion because you know who the passengers are.
And one very simple marketing question: how do you get your new business? Is it really coming from word of mouth and recommendation because you're moving in this very sort of rarefied upper echelon of senior management?
Certainly, as Greg said, from the charter perspective, the internet is a factor, although I think for most operators like Privatair or TAG Aviation, we count on long-term clients that have become accustomed to the type of service that we provide. And while we have to be price competitive like everyone else, what they're looking for is the certainty that the flight will operate the way they expect. For the rest of the business, whether it be maintenance, aircraft management, which are primary elements for TAG, it's virtually purely word of mouth.
Just when you use a phrase like aircraft management, what's in that? Because that's obviously a big...
Easiest way to describe it is if you owned an apartment house, you probably would have a management company that took care of the maintenance, the leasing requirements, the regie, exactly. While it's not exactly a parallel, there are some similarities, the only difference being that we're dealing with something that moves and in a business that is highly regulated, probably one of the most highly regulated businesses in the world. So it's different, but there are similarities.
Do you have the same perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, it's we describe it full turnkey management. So
full turnkey management.
Absolutely. Yeah. So imagine you wanted a jet tomorrow. You're a very clever guy, but you don't know the ins and outs of aviation. So first things first, you need to have people to fly you. So you'll need a couple of pilots at least. Maybe a cabin crew member, maybe a mechanic. So we offer payroll services, hiring, firing, management of the personnel, the whole maintenance management of the aircraft. Making sure that the airplane is fully certified. We deal with the regulatory authorities for you. We make sure your parts are changed when they need to be changed. aircraft cleaning, everything down to the last nut and bolt on the airplane.
And many clients, because of the way regulations are set up, are required to operate commercially. What we mean is under the same rules that Swiss or BA operate, and it is exactly the same certificate. So we have to have the same compliance team in place that BA or Swiss would. So you can imagine the level of complexity that goes with that.
Rob, we're talking about two quite different business models between TAG Aviation and Privatair, but just to highlight some of the main characteristics that are different about what you do compared with what Greg does.
TAG Aviation is quite an old company. It goes back to almost 40 years. Here in Switzerland, we're a relatively large employer. In Geneva, roughly 500 employees. Although interestingly, most people wouldn't think this, but it's mostly technical people, meaning mechanics. We also have 8 subsidiaries. We have operations in the UK, in Spain, the Middle East, and as we've already discussed, in Asia as well. Also, a related company, meaning a company with common shareholders, owns an airport that is southwest of London called Farnborough.
Farnborough, okay.
Right.
Well.
So we're quite a diversified company, and the part that the public might see would probably be our charter business, but in fact that represents only about 10% of our business. The other parts, meaning aircraft management, technical services, airport operations, and a host of other smaller businesses are what make up the core of TAG Aviation.
So the technical services would be a service you'd market to other private airlines or to scheduled or a mix? I mean, how does that work?
Actually, it's quite interesting. Certainly we offer the services to our own clients who need maintenance for their aircraft, but it's an interesting business because most of our large customers are our competitors. We happen to provide a service that they need, and it goes the other way as well. We use them for services.
But there's so much in your business which seems to be counterintuitive, because whenever you sort of peel back one layer, there's a surprise.
It's not the way it appears.
Yeah, exactly.
Although it is like any other business, and that is, if you focus on fundamentals and understand the basics, it's actually quite a simple business.
I see. Okay. So, from your point of view, what do you mean? You say you're a smaller competitor, but where do you focus in the piece that you've chosen to be good at?
Yeah, I mean, Privatair is of a similar age actually as what used to be called air leasing, is now TAG.
Exactly.
So we were founded in 1977 here in Geneva. What we're known for is flying airliner-sized airplanes in the business aviation market. So we have pretty much a focus on 757, 767, 737 size airplanes. Things that normally you would fly 148 seats with EasyJet, for example, to London. We fly with as little as 6 seats on board.
So there's some management teams, boards.
Highly luxurious interiors. So Privatair was set up like an airline because it was flying airliners.
I see.
And so over the years, we focused on that. It's a fairly rarefied market in terms of business aviation. In total, I think there are something like 160 737 size VIP machines in the world, out of 7,800 made. So it's a fairly small size. But in the last few years, we focused on renting that equipment back to airline companies. So we were fairly and squarely in business aviation, but in the last 10 years, we've developed a business for airlines, which puts us back in commercial aviation.
So without mentioning names of companies, how would that work? Airline schedule carrier flying from London to Boston has a problem, would come to you? What kind of problem would you solve for them?
We look at specific routes, niche routes, where there's a high business class demand and a low economy class demand.
I see. Okay.
So we've been flying recently a lot of oil routes. So Houston is a good destination. Oil routes in West Africa, like
Houston to from.
We did 7 years of flying for KLM between Amsterdam and Houston.
I see. Okay.
And we're looking at some other Houston routes at the moment. We fly to West Africa, to Pointe Noire, and Accra in Ghana, and for at the moment for Lufthansa. And we fly to some smaller strips which wide-body airplanes can't fly out of. So we're currently servicing place called Pune in India, from Frankfurt for Lufthansa.
And this is a niche that he's developing, which you have anyway?
Actually, there were some similarities between our companies 10 years ago, as Greg says. For various reasons, we went in different directions.
Yeah.
And our TAG Aviation is not at all similar to where it was 11 or 12 years ago. And I would say that's probably the case with Privatair as well.
Yeah, you have to change or die in this industry,
Exactly.
and we both
have to change
or die.
Or die. Yes.
Yeah. To give you just an idea of scale, TAG is one of the largest operators of business jets in the world. If you were talking to a company that manufactures electronic components here in Switzerland, or a pharmaceutical company, they're dealing with millions or billions of items that they work with, that they make every day. As one of the largest operators in the world, we operate 145 airplanes. So it's a very, very, and with all of the support services that are required. So it's just an entirely different business structure. It's large in its own right, but very small number of customers.
So it's a fascinating story. Ladies and gentlemen, we've uncovered important aspects of an industry which maybe we hadn't appreciated was so complicated before. And I'm sure you join me in thanking Greg Thomas and Rob Wells for coming in and spending time with us this morning. You can find out more about both companies by going to their website. It's a simple address, privatair.com and tagaviation.com. And most grateful for your time coming in this morning. This has been a Swiss Style and Dukascopy TV production. We've got more interviews coming up for you in the near future. And I wish you all a very good morning. Thanks for being with us.